What's up guys? In this video, I'm going to go over what a stack method is, all of the benefits, some examples, and how you can acquire more deals using less of your own money and sometimes put cash in your pocket to close these deals. So before we get started, my name is Jamie Marcos. I'm a nationwide transactional lender funding multiple deals per month. I've done over 200 transactions and funded tens of millions of dollars in transactional funds over the last 2 years. And I'm here to help you understand how you can use a transactional lender like myself to acquire more deals with less of your own money. So before we get into this video, make sure you like and subscribe. I am also on Instagram at It's Jamie with a Y. So I'll see you there and let's get into it. Okay guys, so I'm going over the stack method type of transaction. This is how you acquire real estate with zero out of pocket. So we're going to go through this presentation to kind of fill you in on the benefits of a stack method, also what it is and some of the things to look out for. Also have some examples to go through as well. This is simply what a stack method is. So the stack is taking a DSCR loan or a first position loan product, like a primary loan product is what they call it. You are stacking it with seller carryback in second position. So you have a DSCR loan stacked with a seller carry. DSCR goes in first, seller carry goes in second. Transactional funds, why do you even need those if you have a seller carry? Well, because you cannot close deals with paper. So cash has to actually go into escrow to close that transaction. And that's why you need the full stack of primary loan, a seller carryback, and transactional lender. So that in a nutshell is what a stack method actually is. When people say stack, those are the two loan types that they're actually stacking. A primary loan product like a DSCR and seller carry in second. So if you were buying a $1 million property, you would have a DSCR lender. And for this example, we're saying that the DSCR lender agrees that it's a $1 million property. So maybe they've appraised it, they value it at $1 million. They're going to give you a term sheet that basically says we will fund 70% of that value, 70% LTV or loan to value. So that means the DSCR lender is bringing in $700,000 to that escrow to close this deal. Now, remember we said primary loan product stacked with a seller carryback. This is why you're asking the seller now to carry $400,000. Just hang on, because I know 700 plus 400 is not 1 million. It's more than that, right? So, okay, just hang on. So that equals 110% financed, right? You're 10% financed more than what you agreed to purchase that property at, which was $1 million. You're actually financed for $1.1 million. So how does the 100,000, that 10%, go back to the investor? How does that happen? In this example, right, you have a seller open to carrying 400,000. So the DSCR lender in the primary position is bringing 700,000 to the table. And remember in our last slide, we had the transactional funder that has to bring the cash to close before you can create that seller carry. Again, in the example, you have 700,000. I would have to bring as the transactional lender 300,000. We are 100% financed at that close, but also the seller is now going to carry back 400,000. Of that 400,000, the 300 that I put in comes back to me. The 100,000 is then given back to the investor buying that property, and that is typically to use towards the closing costs, fees, also some in their pocket to help stabilize that property and push the value even higher. So 700 plus 400 gives you 110% finance. That extra 100,000 goes back in your pocket to pay for your closing costs, fees, and stabilization. Cool. So how do you find these deals? That's a question I always get. What am I looking for? Who am I talking to? So it's a very common question from multiple investors doing multiple types of deals. They want to learn this creative strategy, so they want to know what to look for so they can convert their leads. That's the most important thing here, is being able to convert your lead flow so you can look at hundreds of properties this way and start evaluating whether or not the stack method is the type of acquisition strategy you want to be using. So what to look for: high equity or free and clear properties. This means the seller owns it outright, or they have a very small mortgage left to be paid off. But this is where this type of acquisition strategy flourishes. Sellers are motivated by cash. So maybe some of these sellers are owners of multifamily properties or RV parks, but they're getting older. Maybe the kids don't want to take over that asset. And so they are very motivated to sell, but they also need cash. They can't be waiting around for a balloon payment to happen in 10 years. I talked to one guy before who was 80 years old, and he was saying, everybody keeps coming to me with these 10-year balloons. I might not even have 10 years. So sellers are motivated by a big cash down payment, right? They're open to financing because most times, like I said, if they're a multifamily owner or a cash flowing rental property owner, they understand cash flow. They like the mailbox money. So this is a way to check 2 of those boxes for them. This is not meant for your average single family home, long-term rental use. Now you can underwrite them this way, but this is not where I'm trying to go over the best case. So multifamily, small multifamily, apartments, RV parks. I put mobile homes there as well. All of this depends on the loan product, but the concept is cash flowing assets. Sellers who understand investment, we already kind of talked about this, but typically these owners are investors themselves, right? They're more sophisticated during negotiations. They understand cash flow. How much of that cash flow are you going to give me on a monthly basis if I agree to seller finance or seller carry you on a portion of that financing? Why sellers say yes? So we're going to go over some of the benefits for them so you can take this to your negotiating table with that seller and help them understand how this benefits them. Large lump sum of cash at the close, like we talked about, that big down payment, right? $700,000 coming from the primary lender. Of that amount, you agreed to give them $600,000 of that. So they get $600,000 down payment at closing. So that's a big lump sum of cash. And then you get a monthly note payment, which I said these investors or sellers tend to understand very well cash flow and mailbox money. This is an asset they've already run, they've already understand, and they've already owned, right? So the note can transfer to their heirs. That's a great asset as well, because we were talking about if they're older, a lot of their concern is, cool, give me the lump sum cash in case I have any health issues or things that need cash right away. But also if I'm holding a lien on that property, I can transfer that to my heirs, continue fueling their journey with that cash flow as well. So I have something to turn over other than just cash. You can reach their asking price. The best part about this strategy is if a person is asking $1 million and maybe it doesn't value at $1 million at that point, the lender would come in, they would give you, let's say if they only gave you $600,000. Guess what? You can ask that seller, hey, if I still hit your purchase price, will you carry me on $500,000? Or if you still carry me on $400,000, I'll just bring the extra money to the table, right? So it's a way to hit the purchase price they're asking for. Potential tax benefits, let's go over this real quick. I am not an accountant. I'm not a CPA of any sort. So I do know though that this delays what lump sum of cash they would have to pay taxes on. So this just delays that cash flow and spreads it out over time because now they're receiving monthly payments instead of a larger lump sum on the full amount. These again are the best asset types for Stack. I'm not going to go too far in depth. What you can see here is pretty obvious. These are all cash flowing, net operating income producing assets, right? We got small multifamily, large multifamily, RV and mobile home parks, single family, but Airbnbs tend to do better, right? Or midterm rentals, right? So anything that is cash flowing, and I have the stars there. Typically for me, this just means that these are major hitters for DSCR lenders because they love the cash flow. It's so consistent, it's easy to underwrite, and the DSCR loan product was created for these types of assets. Because if somebody left let's say you bought a small multifamily like a quadplex, if one person leaves, you have 3 other units to help you continue producing income while you recover that one empty unit. Same with large multifamily. Now, RV parks and mobile home parks, the reason it has the least amount of stars for me is because the loan products are typically limited. Every lender in every state for every location will evaluate a RV or a mobile home park differently because there's all different numbers of pads, there's all different amenities. Sometimes the land is more valuable in one place than the other place, right? So you have to get a very specific lender. And while it's not the prime asset to use for a stack method, it still can be done. Single family, like long-term rental, midterm rental, and Airbnb as a short-term rental, this is still very good. And I only gave it 4 stars again because it is a single unit, right? It's not as good as these two because it's a single unit. So if you don't have a renter, income goes away. But now you're having to depend more on your comparables in that area. This is huge, guys, okay? Because what I'm going over right now is the type of assets that primary lenders like to fund. So without that lender, you can't understand what type of requirements they have so that you can go get those assets and have an easier time closing those deals. Okay, how to negotiate the stack, right? Understand, we just talked about this. This is literally what I was talking about. I should have changed the slide earlier, but understanding the loan product first, super, super important. I cannot stress this enough, because if you go with a DSCR lender, they are underwriting that property based on the income that it makes. It's not based on your income as a personal income earner. If you can understand how they value the property, they will then give you the loan to value, LTV, that we talked about. And that loan to value, let's say if it's like our example, 70%, 700,000, you now know you can take that number and start negotiating the remaining 300,000. So delivering an offer early, don't wait for perfect underwriting. Deliver an offer when the seller says no, learn why, come back and address each objection with objective evidence. Now, if you ever sold anything, it's very hard to work with a person who just starts giving you offer after offer. Well, what about this as a cash offer? What about this? Would you do something creative? Would you carry this amount? How about this balloon? How about this interest rate? And there's no rhyme or reason for why they're trying to negotiate you. And after a while, you just say, hey, what about just giving me my purchase price? What I like to tell people, again, after going to look for that first piece of your stack, right? The first layer to your stack, the DSCR or the primary loan product. Now you get that number. You can now go to your seller and say, your asking price is too high. I've talked to 5 different lenders. They all value it a lot lower, but here's what I can do. Okay? So if I hadn't gone to 5 different lenders to ask how they value it, I have no evidence that I'm searching for the answers for this seller. But if you come with the evidence saying, hey, I'm talking to everyone here, I want to buy your property, here's how it's being valued, can we work on the rest? Using lender data as leverage, that's what we're talking about, getting 5 quotes, taking that information back to the seller to then agree on terms, not just the price. Okay, communication is everything. So these deals, I see them fall apart all the time because of poor communication. We're talking about a lot of moving parts here. You got a lender, a primary lender who wants to evaluate this property. You have a seller who's very scarce on their purchase price and you have to do some negotiating there. We haven't even reached the title company yet. And so now we got to talk to the primary lender. You also have a transactional lender and you have to be able to communicate that as well. Telling the lender exactly who's funding the down payment, disclosing the second position liens, asking the lenders about sourcing and seasoning, separating escrows to satisfy the primary lender requirements, confirming lender second position policy, coordinating title company. These are all communications that have to happen, right? This is called disclosing. So as long as you're disclosing all of your intentions for that property, people will give you the answers you need. Sometimes those answers might be no, but if you're the type of person who goes to one lender, they tell you no, you can't do that, and then you just quit, you probably don't deserve to be getting a stack method deal closed, 0 out of pocket, right? But let's talk about the people who are ready to do the work and get the deal that they want. So there's a lot of communication there that I just talked about. There's lenders, there's title company. I'm going to go over more of those in future videos. So if you have any questions about those communications, I just wanted to prop those up so you know what's all involved. The don'ts on here, skipping separate escrows. This is a very strict lender requirement, right? Sending funds from a third party without disclosing. This is something that happens all the time because we tell our borrowers to disclose to the lender you're bringing third party funds for your down payment. If we send in those funds and they say, who is that LLC? It's because you didn't disclose to them and they weren't okay with that. So now they have to go back and check. And this is not the time to be doing it because typically when we're ready to fund, we are ready to close that deal. And you don't want this happening at the closing table. Okay, so you can go over this, watch this video again, snapshot this screen, or get the link in the description below. Cool, so here's a real deal, some real deal examples, right? That was a very large deal, lots to coordinate, lots of moving parts, lots of moving money for sure. right now in the pipeline, I have a $2.6 million down payment only. So this is probably a mess up on the slide. I should have described that better. But it's not a $2.6 million RV park. This is the $2.6 million down payment that we would be providing if this deal goes to close. So that tells you a little bit about how big that park actually is and how much it actually is selling for. Problem solved. This is kind of a funny one for me, but it goes to show the right operators have the best communication. So what happened is the operator on this one, the buyer, calculated the closing payments, the closing costs a little off, and he was about $15,000 short. Knowing and understanding the stack method structure, he just went back and asked the seller to carry back more money, and he did. And obviously, we already had the second lien position ready to go, so we had to put him in third, but he is third position to his own second position. Having good communication with your seller, having them totally understand the transaction is crucial for things like this, being able to adjust and pivot when necessary. And then this last one here, I worked with somebody last year. They're changing some things up in their business this year, so that's exciting for them. But last year, as soon as they met me and learned about this, they scaled right away. Jamie, what are the things we need to put in place? How can we do this on at scale? And how do we tackle these the same every time? We put the systems in place with them. We closed 12 deals last year. They were taking roughly $100,000 back every single deal with that overfund that we talked about. Their deals looked very much like the example I gave. $1 million properties, primary lenders coming in for that 70%. They negotiating with the seller at 40%, creating that 10% overfund, and then getting their deals funded, cash in pocket. And of course, because they're good operators, they use that cash to inject back into the properties, stabilize them, and that is where they're at right now. So this is an amazing strategy to not only acquire your first property, zero out of pocket, but scale with cash in pocket. Cool. We already went over these, kind of the higher purchase price, large lump sum of cash, holding a note on something that's familiar, tangible assets, right? Passing the notes to their heirs, and also some of the tax benefits that everyone should look up to make sure that it fits your situation. As for the investors who are buying this, we talked about the scale, acquiring cash flowing assets, zero out of pocket. You definitely can't beat that, especially when there's stabilization and capex you can receive at closing, which is that $100,000. You preserve personal capital. This is something we didn't go over, but the reason I exist as a transactional lender is because that allows investors to put their capital towards more acquisition. If you know that I can bring $2.6 million as a down payment to your deal, you can then deploy $2.6 million into the next deal. It allows investors to utilize their preserved capital for other marketing or other forms of scaling their business. Now you have more income because you acquired another property, and you can repeat the process. So because you didn't use any of your own cash, that team that I was helping them scale, by using this strategy, they just rinse and repeat every single time. Every single deal looked exactly the same. Here is the contract. Here is the seller agreement. Let's get started with your TC. Open up title, open up escrow, and get it to close, right? Transactional money comes in, closes that deal, funds it out to the next title company, records the seller second, transactional funds come back, and boom, you own another property. Cool. So this is the last slide, guys. Basically, if you're ready to stack your first deal, don't hesitate. Make sure you're contacting me as soon as possible so you can understand and get all of your questions answered so that you can then communicate effectively to the sellers that you want to help out, solve their problems, and get into these new properties zero out of pocket. So identifying free and clear properties, understanding the primary loan product first, convert seller finance conversations to allowing them or helping them understand seller carry. Bring in me for your transactional funding so we can bring the cash to close that deal. It's as simple as that, guys. Literally 4 steps to getting these done. That is the overview of a stack method transaction. So there's my information at the bottom. My name is Jamie Marcos at It's Jamie with a Y on Instagram. JJ Creative Capital is my business. Look that up if you have a deal ready for review, and I will see you guys in the next video. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed that video and learned a ton about the stack method so that you can get into more deals zero out of pocket. I would love to connect with you or answer any of your questions, so please comment below if you have any questions about what I just talked about today. I would love to connect with you, and I'll see you guys in the next video.